Good Gabs, sponsored by Skillskin, a nonprofit organization empowering individuals with disabilities through employment. Well, tell us more about the Land Conservancy. What's that work look like? How did it come about? I don't think a lot of us know. We read a little bit, but we don't quite know how it all works.
Yeah, so the organization was founded in 1991. It was a kitchen table volunteer-run organization until 96, when the board hired Chris DeForest, who was the first executive director, and he grew the organization slowly over years. And our work is really divided into two main groups. A large amount of our work is focused on the protection of private land. So there are legal terms, legally binding agreements that we work out with private landowners to help permanently protect their land from future subdivision and development.
So these are like conservation easements?
You got it, exactly. Okay. Right, yeah. So a landowner can elect to donate or sell a conservation easement to us. We hold those rights and we monitor them to make sure that they're being upheld. The land can be transferred to heirs, it can be sold. It just can never be developed, counter to the terms of the conservation easement. So that's one set of our work, is that private land protection. The other set of our work is our public land protection, and that's what we've really elevated in the last 5 years, is working with parks and other agencies to acquire land that either go into their ownership for public access or that we manage for public access. And so we've had a number of successes in recent years. The Rimrock to Riverside project, which is the sort of the western skyline, Palisades Park west of downtown. We've acquired.
If it wasn't so cloudy, I think we could
we'd be
see
looking
it
right
from
at
here,
it.
right at the
Exactly
Spokane
right.
Library.
Yeah. So that was a marvelous project. That's now land in City Parks ownership, and it will help connect eventually, once a bridge is built, Palisades Park with Riverside State Park. We also, another successful public acquisition project was our Saltese Uplands addition. If you know the Saltese area, Saltese Uplands is a fabulous county conservation area that's just a beautiful vista overlooking Liberty Lake and City of the Valley. It's right on the crest, sort of the northern flank of Mica Peak, and it overlooks the Saltese Flats, which was farmed for about a century. It's now being converted by our good friend Rob Lindsay at Spokane County back into a natural wetland. And so we were happy to participate in some work there to add another 55 acres to the Saltese Uplands conservation area.
Well, what an incredible project. You know, we were talking about, you grew up here. So did I. And I remember it as farmland. When, drive out there. And I just recently went out after talking with Rob. I was like, all right, I got to see your project. And wow.
Isn't it great?
Yes.
Did you walk those trails?
No, just briefly, right off of the parking lot there. But I saw the new building getting put together, and
the Doris Morrison Learning Center.
Water.
Yeah. Tons of water.
Yes.
And the waterfowl have discovered it. So last spring, the birders were estimating that more migratory waterfowl were coming through Saltese Flats than come through Turnbull Wildlife Refuge. And so our good friend Brian Walker at the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service is now giving us grief about having stolen
took
all
my
his
birds.
Exactly. It's sort of the classic, if you build it, they will come. The natural world is poised to recover when we give it space and a chance and we just help it along. And I think that's the era that we're in, is with all that we know that's going on in terms of biodiversity collapse and climate change and the impacts of development. We're at a point in human history where it's kind of up to us to help nature get a foothold back. And we can do that. And we can do it at the local level and at the international level. It's really deeply satisfying to be part of that effort in the community that I grew up in.
Heck yeah. I'm of the mindset, that even the big things, the national things, they all just start locally, right? We gotta, show people how it's done. These pilot projects or just these groups. I mean, shoot, I didn't know 1991. That seems pretty recent for an organization as impactful as you are. Right? But that's recent in in the Conservancy. At least it feels like it to me. Mm-hmm. Like that organization is, it's a big deal in Spokane.
Yeah.
I thought it might have been around long before, that. It's just so exciting to see if Spokane as a community continues to protect these lands.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we will. We're poised this year to hopefully protect an additional 7,000 acres of land in our region. We've got projects in partnership with national conservation organizations queued up for the coming years to add hypothetically an additional 33,000 acres of conserved land in and around Mount Spokane State Park. And so we're certainly doing our best. Our community is rising to support our need by generously supporting us. We're a 501c3 and we exist off the generosity and the investment of our community, and folks are rising to that challenge. And so we've grown our staff a lot. We have a staff of 9. We're poised to add another 1 or 2 in the coming year. Awesome. And that's a tripling of where we were 5 years ago. So far, it looks like people have a real appetite for and excitement to accelerate land conservation regionally.
Well, so for the listeners, that don't know the Isaac Foundation as well as I do, tell us more.
Yeah. Well, my oldest son, Isaac, when he was 15 months old, was identified with red flags for autism and was officially diagnosed right before his 2nd birthday, which was very cutting edge at the time because he would be 19 years old. So that was a time frame where, he was significantly impacted, and we did a lot of therapies and interventions. Unfortunately, he passed away unexpectedly in 2007. And in the aftermath of that, I was very angry and frustrated because there was a lot of challenges. We couldn't just focus every day on his therapies and helping him to be the best that he could be. We had to just so many obstacles. And in the aftermath, when he passed, I just thought, if I'm not going to have my son, the least I can do is try and improve some of these obstacles. And so I started the Isaac Foundation just actually 4 months after he passed away. Wow. And for the first 8 years, we provided therapy grants because insurance was limiting and excluding services to children once they got diagnosed with autism. So every single year, we gave out therapy and intervention grants for families who had children that needed interventions, but insurance wouldn't cover it. And fortunately, in the state of Washington, we experienced some insurance reform. So insurance companies could no longer exclude benefits and services.
Win.
Yeah, very big win. So that meant that after all of these years of building these wonderful relationships with these families and knowing the obstacles and the gaps in services and supports, we decided to pivot and provide some of those ourselves. And that's what we do.
Well, Spokane is lucky to have the foundation.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks for coming on today.
My pleasure.
Curious, what's going on in your world?
Well, I mean, the good, the bad, and the ugly, or just the good?
We're here to hear it all.
Well, I mean, we opened our new location thanks to Skillskin in our new building on Sharp, and it's crazy to me how if you build it, they will come. So in our last building, when we were out on East Broadway, it was like 1,100 square feet.
Okay, that's pretty tight.
Oh, it is tiny because you put 9 kids in there, and they're busy because we're individuals on the autism spectrum and ADHD and hyperactivity, and man, it was like packed, and it would also heat up so fast.
Oh yeah, all the body heat.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yes, and of course young people and puberty and body odors. It was like, whoa, it was a lot. So we got into the new building thanks to Skillskin. So we have, it's funny because just the clubhouse space, I've done calculations because I love bean counting and like spreadsheets and stuff. You could put our entire office, including the staff offices and the bathrooms and everything, in the space that the clubhouse kids now have to romp around in. It's
wow.
huge. Yes. So it has been pretty amazing. But with that, means that they keep wanting to bring more friends and they're recruiting more kids to come in, which is super great. So we're cooking. Yeah. So we went from working with about 100, I think we figured 150 families a month in our last building to touching and working with 1,000 individuals a month in the new building. So it's just, like I said, it's just kind of mind blowing how bigger
quick.
space. Yeah. And well, we can do things simultaneously now. So, it's been great.
Maybe let's talk a little bit about employers, and maybe I'd love to hear your perspective on what can employers do when someone like self-identifies that there's mental illness that they're experiencing. Do you have any advice for them?
I do. First of all, you need to know who to disclose to. I've had some bad experiences with employers in the past. You need to know who to talk to. And I know the best people for me to talk to are employee resources.
Uh-huh.
Because if you tell somebody who's in a position of power who doesn't know how to deal with it, you might get canned. And that's
terrible.
It's a sad reality of working with a mental illness. The cool thing about my job, Steve, is I actually get to disclose my mental illness and work with people who are where I used to be. And my mental illness is a real asset. It's a strength where I work. A lot of employers, mental illness is not a strength. Mental illness is a sign of weakness. It's a sign that the person might not, in the employer's mind, be competent to do the job, and they want to get rid of you. So what my thinking is you want to talk to the employment resources and get it to the right person. I know it's tough, but in a lot of jobs, disclosing your mental illness might not be the right idea. And that's a tough thing because you're
cold, hard truth, though. But maybe employers who are listening to this, like, help change your culture at home.
Absolutely.
Like, this is in your house. You can help, be more open to talking about this. Talk to your HR resources, your managers, your frontline staff. Like, let's normalize, this conversation.
And one of the biggest parts of my recovery, Steve, was work. It's the cornerstone. And for me, the coolest thing is not the paycheck. It's not the structure that the work gives me. It's actually the socialization with other people. Yeah. I'm too busy to be sick. I have too many responsibilities to have symptoms, if that makes any sense. And one thing about mentally ill people that sets us apart from people is most of us are highly intelligent, and we just have we have some disabilities that knock us down.
Right.
But there's still something to be said for that level of intellect. The intellect in my case and a lot of people with mental illness doesn't go away. I got through college, man. It took me 3 shots, but I got my degree. And a lot of people with mental illness, if they're not pushed into disability, SSI, SSDI, they can actually make a good run at work.
Absolutely, they can. And even if they are pushed into, the SSDI, it's like find organizations like us that are experts in how to keep your benefits and work so you can have, the benefit of a job.
And one thing I really want to stress too is have a vision of getting off those benefits and getting benefits good enough like I've done and many others have done. State benefits, man, I'm rife with benefits. I've got a pension, I've got deferred comp, I've got disability, I've got Cadillac Medical through the state of Washington. And I'm so thankful for all those benefits. I've worked jobs where I had nothing.
Yep.
And this job is fantastic for me in that I get to give back, man. I get to do the DSHS mission statement, which is transform lives, just by having a mental illness and sharing it with others.
Well, that level of empathy and experience, you really get to sit with people and come alongside them. We talk about that in our work a lot. It's like we want to come alongside someone, meet someone where they're at, and then, be a partner in their employment journey. It's like you get to be a partner in, their life journey and through, their mental illness, like whatever they're experiencing. That is awesome. Thank you. You're in the zone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting job, and that the greatest thanks I'll ever get is really just to have somebody not come back and not know how they're succeeding, but know that the system, the mental health system, actually helped them succeed in some form or fashion. And I was a little cog in that wheel.
Tell us about taking one Wednesday off a month.
Wellness Wednesday. So here's another thing, you guys. So what I recognized is that if I do not control my schedule, other people will, and I will be a log in someone else's river. And I just realized, like my post said on LinkedIn, I never take days off, because when you have kids, man, your time is not your own. And I was finding myself getting really weathered. So I thought, can I do one day a month? Kids are in school. I'm actually not socializing. I'm not on a clock. I don't have a babysitter for just 2 hours. Can I just take a day? And so I started that last month, and it was night and day for me. I just sat
Tell
on the
us
couch.
more.
Yeah. I cried to a Netflix movie. I was like, wow, it's 11:30. It's been a good day. I made sure that like the small space that I was operating in, my living room, was clean, so I didn't have to feel the pressure. I lit 2 candles. I got cozy under a blanket, and I just thought, I do not think that I realized how much I needed this. And I'd love to do it more than one Wednesday a month, but we're clocking on one Wednesday, and so yesterday was my Wellness Wednesday, and I have to tell you, I see it on my calendar, and I'm like, oh, it's coming up.
Yes, you're getting excited.
It's coming. And I told my husband, if there's a day I ever can't take it, I was like, I'll need a makeup Wednesday.
Naturally.
He laughed. He's like, I mean, are you serious?
Yes.
I am dead serious. Do not even test how serious I am. And it's beautiful. And then I find that with me, when I can speak it out loud, like that's why I posted it. And I did not expect so many people for it to resonate with them. And I think I'm up to like 5,000 views. I'm like, I can do all the things about how inspiring our students are, but I post about me sitting on a couch for a day, and it is inspiring. But I love it.
Well, because it is like we talk about, self-care. I mean, all these buzzwords get talked about all the time, but what does it really mean? Well, sometimes it's sitting on the couch.
Yeah.
It's Wellness Wednesday. You gave something that's like ethereal, like something you can grab onto. Like people understand how you describe that. I understand it.
Yeah. And you know what, Ed, I feel like people can do it. I'm busy. My job could be all consuming if I let it. I have 4 children. I have a wonderful husband that I'd like to stay happily married to forever. And like, I get a day on the couch. And so I just did it for the year as well. And I remember in August being like, this is so selfish. They'll never let me do this. And then people were like, I saw that you have a Wellness Wednesday, blocked out for the whole day. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I mean, is something going on? They're like, no, good for you.
It resonated.
And I was like, wow, why didn't I do this 10 years ago? Yeah, no, it's brilliant. And no quick Zooms either. Like, this is the thing, right, with the Zoom world. But could you do a quick Zoom? No quick Zooms. Day off. Mental health. And it makes me better. And that's the hard thing. Drinking more water, moving your body. I'm not trying to be a fitness buff. I'm just trying to move my body so I can play with my kids. Sleeping. It just makes you better. And yet I always put myself last on my own priority list.
As often many people do.
Yeah.
I had started booking out time in my calendar because, quick Zooms.
Just quick
stack.
Zoom.
I just started blocking off time in my calendar so I could think.
Yeah. That resonates with me. So this is what happened is the pandemic hits. And I'm a recruiter by nature. I recruit faculty, I recruit students, I recruit ideas. I am like a collector of all the good things. And the pandemic hits and no one wants to meet with me. No new ideas. And I'm like, crickets on my calendar. And I was like, I'm feeling really awkward right now. What do I do with all this free time? And so I started doing just quick runs, actually, more like a jog. My body hates me. What are you doing? And I found in that time I was never going to be a marathon runner. But I was forced to be alone with my own thoughts. And it was powerful because when I was on the Centennial Trail, I couldn't check an email.
Yep.
I couldn't call anyone because Lord knows I was breathing so hard. I wasn't able to communicate. And I thought, what is this right here? And I found that in order for myself to get truly creative, I couldn't do that 15 minutes between meetings. I had to quiet my mind and let it wander.
Yes.
And a funny story about me, everyone go on walks or runs or take creative time. I am literally running, walking. And we had just proposed something to a company, like, do you want to get behind this and invest in it? And they were kind of quiet, kind of like, basically a no, right? When they don't, when they don't ring you back, you're like, oh man, that fell flat. And I'm on my run, and that's where my mind wandered to. And I thought, I think they like the idea. Yeah, okay, running. For those who can't see me on the podcast, but I'm like, but maybe the packaging needed to be different. Okay. Yeah, like instead of like going to their offices to provide this service, maybe we host it on our own. Yeah, and they could invite their employees to come, but they would be with other people. Maybe I'll just tweak it. A few days later, I submitted a new proposal. It was funded within 72 hours.
Landed.
What we do is we hire a site coordinator and we place them in that school. So they work in the school and they help identify students that are at risk of academic failure and among other things. I mean, that's the primary thing, but kids that just need support. Maybe a kid that is alone a lot, doesn't have friends, and just kind of watching out for them and trying to provide opportunities for them to engage with other students. They work with the school to identify a school-wide goal. So attendance is down right now. Attendance is really bad because, during the pandemic, kids didn't have to go to school. Right. They got into that habit of not going to school. So now they don't think it's that important to go to school.
Dang. That's a challenge. Seriously. Like, how are we going to overcome that as a society?
Right. So school isn't valued right now. And so our site coordinators work to bring that whole attendance goal to meet that attendance goal of the school. So they provide incentives. It's way easier in elementary school, right? Because you can offer trinkets and, activities and things like that to get kids excited to come to school. It's a little bit harder in middle school and high school. You have to, maybe have some really intriguing programming. So that's another thing we do is we create programs that we know the kids will be interested in and they want to participate in. Sometimes being involved in that requires you to have your attendance up or not to be failing your classes. So we are very strategic in a school and working with the school to identify the weaknesses and how we can support the in overcoming some of those challenges.
Yeah, and identifying, at-risk youth.
Right.
I was one of those people, I didn't know communities and schools. Sorry. But I did learn about maybe 4 years ago, Home Depot brought me to one of your fundraisers. Out at Northern Quest. And I was impacted. I was like, wow, this is the kind of organization that I want to be, involved with and understand. And what impacted me was you had some folks come and speak about their experiences in the program and some of the kids, but also those folks who are at the school. And what I heard is like they're in relationship with these kids. They know their story, and sometimes pretty intimately know their stories. And I have to imagine just knowing someone cares, just one person, that's just gotta help a bit. And that's what impacted me. I was like, I love this work.
Yep. Yeah. So they develop the relationships with those students. And you're right. They get to know what's going on in that kid's life, what's going on with the family. Does the family need support? And reaching out. We've got some really dynamic site coordinators that work in schools, and all of our site coordinators are connected. So if we have a student at Bemis who has older siblings that go to Shaw and or Rogers High School, we've got site coordinators at each of those schools, so we can work with those site coordinators and say, hey, this family needs X, Y, and Z. This is what's going on. And so everybody's in the loop.
Incredible, like a continuum.
Yeah. Right.
Awesome.
And that's what we want to create is a continuum of support. So we target schools that our kids are in, and then we want to know what's the middle school they're going to go to, what's the high school they're going to go to, and we need site coordinators along the way. So once you have that support, you typically need to continue. You typically need that support throughout. It's not, oh, I'm good now. Right. And there's some kids like that for sure. But for the majority, especially in Northeast Spokane, that's an area that has a high level of low-income families and people that are struggling with poverty and food insecurity and homelessness and things like that. And so that's an area that we focus on, and we want to make sure that the students and families are constantly receiving support. We've got kids right now who are, I'm not going to name the school, but it's in Northeast Spokane, that the whole family's living out of a sedan, and they park near the school, and they sleep. I asked the psych coordinator, so are they sleeping sitting up in the back seat? Yes. And so they go to the school to shower and to get fresh clothes and things like that, or wash clothes. But yeah, there's families that are living in cars right around the schools. I mean, I know that we know this, but it's different when you actually hear about it
and see it, like,
and you
for
see
yourself.
Yeah, totally.
Well, what a commitment to their children to, like, actually keep them in school.
Right. Well, that's a stable place, right? So they can go to school, they can get a shower, they can wash their clothes, they can get meals, they can get food and snacks. It's a warm place. So even if they're not necessarily going to class and paying attention, it's a place where they can get all these resources. I mean, it's hard to pay attention in class when you're dealing with homelessness and
or hungry,
right? Or hungry. So.
Or not wanting to go home because whatever situation's
because
happening.
what's going on at home. We've got kids that are living in all those situations, and those are the kids that we provide a lot of support to. And it's a heavy burden on our site coordinators mentally, and so we got we wrote several grants, and they all got funded. So this is really speaking.
All right, congratulations!
I know, I was so surprised. I'm like, oh my god! Every time one came in, I was just impressed. But it's because mental health is on the rise. I mean, it's we've known this, right? The United States doesn't take care of our doesn't look at mental health the same way other countries do, and so our people that struggle with mental health are usually neglected and not receiving proper services and things like that, and it's taboo still. Anyway,
let's change that.
Right? But COVID really kind of brought that to the forefront, especially kids in isolation for so long and not able to have those social interactions, or being in households that just were not healthy for them to be in 24 hours a day. So we were able to get a mental health program manager, and she has her MSW. So we had our own professional therapist.
Yeah, in-house.
Right. Because there's so few resources in Spokane for people to go to. And we don't provide mental health services, but we have her as an expert to inform our site coordinators how they can run more effective programming that provides social and emotional support for our students that are still coming out of that, still recovering from the pandemic.
Good for you and your organization to take that next step.
I can imagine. Super exciting.
Yeah, I imagine that site coordinator, like, they're doing their best, right?
Right.
But now they have someone they can pick up, a professional, pick up the phone, call.
Right.
I imagine that's going to lead to, like, less burnout too.
Exactly.
I spent a lot of time in the NICUs when I used to sell medical supplies, and I can't just imagine what the families are going through. I know, like, how I felt.
Yeah.
And I wasn't even the parent.
Yeah. You know, it's tough. In the dream scenario, we as the Ronald McDonald House wouldn't exist. You know, earlier when we were talking about serving more families than we ever had before, it's great to celebrate that. You know, we built this great house. It's incredible what it does, what it serves for families. Very happy to be there. But it is weird to say, like, oh, hey, we serve more families. You know, it's not necessarily a number you want to celebrate, but you know that when you're talking to a donor or you're talking to someone who wants to help, like, there is the need there, and you are that place that can be there for them. And so what these families are going through, you know, I'm not a parent myself, so I can't even begin to imagine the stress, the worry that they are feeling. And so if we can provide any sort of relief to them, it is huge. And I think when you talk to those parents and you just feel their thankfulness to what we provide, you know, just having the place to sleep, providing transportation to and from the hospital, is huge. And you feel that, and you hear other families talk to each other, and
one family's
I bet that's powerful.
It is. It really is. It really is. You'll have one family who says, "Oh, we don't have it that bad," and then the other family's like, "No, we don't have that bad." So there's this level of thankfulness that goes around, and then families taking care of each other.
There's some healing in that moment, I imagine.
Mm-hmm. And one thing that's been nice is we've been able to open up our community areas again. So getting families to connect, that's one of the things we really want families to do. We want them to connect. We want them to be together. That healing that happens, that ability to share your burden and find the empathy in someone else who is going through something similar is huge. We had one family who was staying with us, pretty cool. The dad was a huge Raiders fan, huge Raiders fan. And he was staying with us for a few months. He's going to be back here in a couple months, but dad was a huge Raiders fan. And this year, the Las Vegas Raiders were the opening game for preseason.
Right.
And he was really excited about it. And what he ended up doing was he got a bunch of wings and ribs and he cooked them up in the barbecue. And we have a movie theater room at the North House. And so he reserved the room and he told all the families, hey, anyone who wants to come by, I'm making dinner. We can watch the Raiders game. And that's the type of community, the healing, the support that you want to see is families doing other things to help each other out, whether it's something as simple as making a dinner or, hey, yeah, I can, families who interact and their kids become friends and it's like, hey, I'll watch for 15 minutes so you can go rest your eyes. Things like that. You want that community healing and that community connectiveness to happen.
I can see when people are in service to each other, right? Because this burden is lifted, just being in the house itself. I imagine it's we have a place, it's safe, it's comfortable,
right?
We're fed.
Yeah. And then
that can give back right in that moment.
Yep.
It's got to feel good.
Yeah. And then that give back doesn't stop there. We have families who continue to give back, who, they leave and they run supply drives back at home, or they will send in, hey, here's a check to help out the next family. They'll come back and cook meals. They'll join our board. The number of times that I've been somewhere and it's I stayed at the house. One time I was running a booth at a trade show, and afterwards I ran to grab a pizza on my way home, and I'm sitting there and waiting for the pizza, and I'm talking to the guy who is at the cook and the chef, and he's like, oh, well, what do you do? And I was like, oh, I work for the Ronald McDonald House. And he's like, oh, I stayed at the Ronald McDonald House, and started talking about, why he stayed and how thankful he was. And then that give back doesn't happen. We get businesses all the time who's like, hey, you took care of my kiddo. I want to, do a roundup program for a month. So that give back doesn't happen doesn't stop once they leave.